Chad Magruder, as you prepare to begin your prison sentence for the crimes of Watergate, which have involved so many high White House and administration officials, there is one fundamental question, and that is why? Why would a young man with such a bright future, with a beautiful wife, beautiful children, beautiful home, why would you have become involved?
Well, I think you have to go back to the atmosphere at that time, and Watergate and the whole bugging of the Watergate, the DNC, was a secondary matter in the campaign, and it was something that most of us who happened to get involved were not concerned with. Now, of course, what that shows is that we had somewhere there decided that these type of illegal activities were okay, and consequently we didn't concern ourselves with them. And that, as I've said many times, in hindsight, was absolutely wrong. And because we didn't pay any attention to it and accepted that as a principle, and because the atmosphere was such that there was this desire for information, this desire to sort of get your enemies, most of us accepted that principle and went along with it, and therefore the bugging became a very natural thing. I think, as John Dean said at the Senate hearing, Watergate was inevitable.
Why was there this atmosphere of get your enemies?
Well, I think I mentioned in the book that I just finished that the leadership in the White House had this feeling that I think had developed over the years. The president had been in public life, that people in the other political party, the news critics, were not just opponents, were not just adversaries, they were enemies. And I think Senator Humphrey said it very well. He said, when you take people who are your natural opponents and treat them as enemies, you're going to come to your Watergate. You're going to have those kind of problems. You're going to do things that are unethical and illegal. And I think primarily there was this atmosphere. We, as the staff people under the president, accepted it and found that this was one method to show our good faith in working in the White House and at the committee to re-elect, to follow along with this desire for intelligence, information, and to get your enemies. And we accepted them. And that, of course, was absolutely wrong.
One of the things you suggested in your book was that the president sets the tone for his administration, no matter who the president may be. Do you believe that President Nixon set an immoral tone for his administration?
Well, rather than characterizing it as immoral or unethical, I think the tone was set to do anything to prevent his enemies from getting him. And I think it was true, as I think Bud Krogh mentioned in the when he pleaded guilty in the Ellsberg case, that the president ordered do anything to stop those leaks. Well, when you open it up on that framework where there is no restriction to your activities, then you are going to come to the kind of activities of the plumbers and of the Watergate break-in.
When we survey the damage of Watergate, when we see the number of lives which have been damaged and destroyed, all involving people who were closely connected with the president or had faith in the president and worked for the president, doesn't this tell us something about the moral tone, the moral atmosphere at the White House and the president personally?
Well, there's no question about it. The leadership, as I think I've indicated, sets the tone of an administration or a corporation or whatever it may be. But I do think that we individually, myself, others who have pled guilty, as an example, have to and have accepted the fact that we had individual responsibility. We were mature individuals. We were not unable to understand the difference between right and wrong, and we accepted what were unethical and illegal practices because I think, in my case anyway, I felt the president's policies were correct and that it was more important to achieve the policy end of this administration, and therefore some of the means that we used to achieve that end seemed unimportant at the time. And for all of us, I'm sure it's been a tragic mistake and a tragic lesson, but maybe we will have learned something from this, and for us individually anyway, we'll be able to go on and live a more fruitful life.
Well, what you're saying is that during this period, you were more dedicated to Richard Nixon than to the country's ideals?
Well, there's no question about it that we subjugated our ethics to what we thought were his policies, and we accepted practices that I think, if anybody ever asked me would I have ever been involved in something like this before, I would have said, of course not, because my background and training was I think, such that I never would have concerned myself with anything illegal of this kind. But when I was there, all I can say, and I think for all of us, it was very easy.
Did you ever feel that what you were doing was undermining the very foundations of democracy?
No. No, I don't think we ever got that. Again, Watergate was a minor part of the campaign. We were not particularly interested in it. As you know, Gordon Liddy and I did not particularly get along well. If I spent half of 1% of my time on that activity, that was probably more than I did spend on it, because it just wasn't important. I didn't think of it in those terms. Now, you can make a case probably that this type of activity, if allowed to continue by administrations, would certainly do that.
Do you feel at all morally responsible for some of the younger members at the Republican campaign headquarters who looked up to you because you were one of the principal leaders?
Oh, I think no question about it. Particularly Bart Porter, who was a close friend of mine and who I brought into the Watergate problem, and who had to plead guilty to a one-count charge and served a certain amount of time in prison, and others who were not involved but who I think did look to me, because I think my relationship with my staff at the Committee to Re-elect and the White House was a very strong one, and I think these people were very disappointed, probably not as disappointed as I was in myself, but certainly I'm sure they were very disappointed, and I was disappointed in having run, I think, one of the most professional and I think finest campaigns that's been run in this country, to have it really ruined because of this aberration, and it was an aberration, I think.
Do you think the country has learned anything from Watergate?
I hope so. I don't know. I think we'll have to see. I think that'll take time.
We've heard it said that everybody does it, that what happened in Watergate was just the tip of a traditional and long-standing iceberg, which has really marred American political ideals. Do you feel that way?
Well, it may or may not be. I don't know. I've not been in other administrations. I've been in many campaigns, and there were things in other campaigns that were probably unethical, at least. But I don't think that's really important. I think now that if something's unethical, you shouldn't do it. It doesn't really matter whether it's been done before. You still shouldn't do it. It's illegal, unethical.
How do you feel about the political process now? Have you lost faith in that process?
Oh, no. I still think good young men ought to get involved, and good young men and women should get involved and get interested, because we need good people in Washington and in state governments and local governments, and I'd hope Watergate would not discourage people.
You had once planned to pursue a political career yourself. Do you see any chance now that you could do that?
Absolutely not. I don't want to. Even if I could, and I don't think I could, but I don't want to. I think I'll find other endeavors to keep myself occupied.
How do you see your own life at this stage now? What do you see lies ahead for you?
Oh, I would hope that I'll be able to lead a useful life after I return from prison. That's what I would hope to do.
One of your old professors, the Yale chaplain, William Sloane Coffin, has said that you were a nice young man when he knew you, but you were not yet a good man. Do you think that you will emerge from this a good man?
Oh, I hope I'm a better man than I was before. I think I'll have to let other people judge that. I think that's a difficult question to judge yourself.
But you have faith in yourself?
Oh, yes, absolutely.